Several days ago, I was sorting through my books and comic collection when I came across one of the most legendary comics, which not only introduced me to the world of Indian epics, but also opened doors for me to explore one of the most epic stories in the history of the world. Yes, none other than the Mahabharata. If this video receives a good number of views and comments, I am even considering creating a dedicated playlist covering all the enthralling details about the Mahabharata. What do you think about that idea? Let me know in the comment section below. Firstly, when we talk about the Mahabharata, or even the Ramayana, I notice three distinct ways people are typically introduced to these epics. The first is through books or comics. Personally, this was my introduction too. The comics not only sparked my interest, but laid a foundation for my deeper exploration of the Mahabharata. Second, many people know the Mahabharata through Indian soap operas. Naturally, I was super excited when the comic illustrations I had grown up with were brought to life in motion pictures. And thirdly, from this video. Or maybe from your Indian friends. So, how do you personally know the Mahabharata? Through which medium did it come into your life? Share your experiences in the comment section. For this first video in the series, I designed the content with two key objectives. First, it is aimed at those of you who might not know much or anything about this epic, and my goal is to ignite your curiosity and motivate you to learn more about it. Secondly, it's also targeted at those of you who may already have substantial knowledge about the Mahabharata. Your input will be invaluable in expanding the discussions in the comments section, making the conversation richer and even more enjoyable. One important clarification I'd like to make before diving deeper. The version of Mahabharata I will be discussing in my videos is the original Indian version. The Mahabharata is an ancient literary work originating from India. The storylines, characters, and teachings in Mahabharata are deeply intertwined with religious principles, particularly Hinduism. I would like to remain respectful, and I apologize in advance if I inadvertently misrepresent or misunderstand anything that might come across as offensive to my Hindu friends. If you find any inaccuracies, please feel free to correct me in the comments. Thank you in advance. Now let's jump into the Mahabharata itself. If it were to be summarized concisely, how might we phrase its premise? Well, the Mahabharata is essentially a tale of political conflict within the kingdom of Hastinapura between two groups of cousins. The Pandavas, 5 brothers on one side, and the Kauravas, 100 brothers on the other. This intricate struggle for the throne eventually culminates in a great war at Kurukshetra, a battle lasting 18 days. During those 18 days, all oaths are fulfilled, all debts are paid, all divine weapons are unleashed, and everything reaches its climactic resolution in this cataclysmic fratricidal war. While this summary condenses the story into a few sentences, it is important to emphasize that this description oversimplifies the complexity of the epic. There are myriad characters, countless subplots, and layers of motivations intertwined throughout the Mahabharata. Nonetheless, at its core, the narrative begins with a family feud between these two groups of royal cousins and concludes on the battlefield at Kurukshetra. In order to provide clarity for beginners who might not know the Mahabharata at all, or to serve as a refresher for those already familiar, I will break down some of the epic's key moments. These highlights will be categorized into 3 eras: the early Hastinapura era, the Pandavas and Kauravas era, and finally the Kurukshetra war era. Let's start with the early Hastinapura era, which encompasses the timeline from the founding of the kingdom of Hastinapura to the birth of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. During this period, several pivotal events unfold, each playing an essential role in shaping the eventual conflicts of the Mahabharata. One of the most significant events in this era is Bhishma's profound and life-altering oath. To introduce him briefly, Bhishma is the grandfather of both the Pandavas and the Kauravas. In the early days of Hastinapura's establishment, Bhishma swore an unbreakable oath. He vowed never to become king of Hastinapura and promised to remain celibate for life. Why did he take such a drastic vow? This sacrifice stemmed from his desire to ensure that the throne of Hastinapura would remain within the lineage of his stepmother, Satyavati. The background is that Satyavati's father had set a condition for her marriage to King Shantanu. Her future children must inherit the throne, not Bhishma, Shantanu's older son from a previous union. To honor his father's love for Satyavati, Bhishma made this oath. However, the consequences of Bhishma's oath would ripple through generations. By forfeiting his claim to the throne, Bhishma inadvertently left the kingdom vulnerable to succession crises. Satyavati's children, who were meant to inherit the throne, either died young or failed to produce heirs. This vacuum in leadership planted the seeds for future disputes. The next significant event involves Bhishma inadvertently becoming part of a chain of tragic events. Bhishma, upholding his role as protector of the throne, won a Swayamvara, a royal contest for marriage, on behalf of his stepbrother Vichitravirya, and brought 3 princesses, Ambika, Ambalika, and Amba, from the kingdom of Kashi as brides for his stepbrother. However, Amba disclosed that she already loved another king and requested to be allowed to marry him. Bhishma, in his adherence to duty, initially rejected Amba's plea but later relented. In a cruel twist, Amba's lover refused to marry her due to Bhishma's earlier intervention. Amba, distraught and blaming Bhishma for the ruin of her life, sought revenge. Filled with anger and despair, she swore to be the cause of Bhishma's death in the next life. Eventually, her soul was reincarnated into a warrior known as Shikandi, who would later play a critical role in Bhishma's downfall during the Kurukshetra War. After the death of Vichitravirya, the kingdom faced another succession crisis, as he left no heirs. Satyavati urged her son Vyasa, the great sage, to help preserve the lineage by fathering children with Vichitravirya's widows, Ambika and Ambalika. However, this led to complications. Ambika gave birth to Dhritarashtra, but because she had closed her eyes during the conception process, as she could not bear to look at the sage's ascetic appearance, Dhritarashtra was born blind. Similarly, Ambalika bore Pandu, but due to her visible fear during conception, Pandu was born pale and frail. Although Pandu was physically capable, his health remained weak. With Dhritarashtra and Pandu as the new heirs, the kingdom of Hastinapura finally had successors. Later, Dhritarashtra married Gandhari, who bore him 100 sons, known as the Kauravas, while Pandu married Kunti and Madri, who became the mothers of the Pandavas. This division between the sons of Dhritarashtra, the Kauravas, and Pandu, the Pandavas, forms the foundation of the epic's central conflict. The next significant period is the Pandava and Kaurava era, spanning from the birth of the Pandavas and Kauravas to the events that spark the Kurukshetra War. This era is particularly crowded with intrigue and events, so let's focus on the key moments that are essential to understanding the story. Drona, a highly skilled warrior and guru, was appointed to train the royal princes of Hastinapura in the art of weaponry and martial skills. Among his students were the Pandavas, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Satyava, and the Kauravas led by Duryodhana. Drona was especially fond of Arjuna, recognizing his unparalleled talent in archery. However, this favoritism would sow resentment among others, including Karna, another brilliant archer, and Duryodhana. Later, Drona would find himself caught in the middle of the battle between his 2 best students during the Kurukshetra War. Karna, the son of Kunti, the Pandava's mother, from a secret union with the sun god Surya, was abandoned at birth and raised by a charioteer named Adhiratha. Despite his humble origins, Karna grew to become a formidable warrior, rivaling even Arjuna in skill. However, when Karna attempted to join the royal contest that had been organized to showcase the prince's abilities, he was mocked for his lower-class status. It was Duryodhana who defended Karna and crowned him king of Anga, earning Karna's eternal loyalty. Unbeknownst to anyone at the time, Karna was actually the eldest of the Pandava brothers, making his friendship with Duryodhana even more tragically ironic. The eventual duel between Karna and Arjuna during the Kurukshetra War remains one of the epic's most emotionally charged and iconic moments. In one of Duryodhana and his uncle Shakuni's many schemes to eliminate the Pandavas, they invited the Pandavas to a palace made of lac, a highly flammable substance, and planned to burn it down with them inside. However, the Pandavas managed to escape, thanks to a warning from their uncle Vidura. Following this presumed assassination, the Pandavas went into hiding, and Duryodhana claimed the throne of Hastinapura unopposed. In their exile, the Pandavas encountered new allies and future spouses. For example, Bhima met the Rakshasi Hidimbai, who became the mother of their son Ghatotkach, another character whose actions proved instrumental on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. One of the pivotal moments of this era is the infamous game of dice. Yudhishthira, the eldest Pandava, was tricked by Shakuni into gambling away not only his kingdom and wealth, but also his brothers and Draupadi, his wife. Draupadi's subsequent humiliation at the hands of Duryodhana and Dushasana further deepened the feud between the Pandavas and Kauravas. Draupadi took a solemn vow. She would leave her hair unbound until she could wash it with the blood of Dushasana. Her vow fueled the Pandavas' rage and became a driving force in their preparation for the eventual Kurukshetra war. The third and final era spans the Kurukshetra war, where every critical conflict and unresolved vow is brought to its dramatic climax. Here, divine weapons are unleashed, friendships, family ties, and ethics are tested, and all debts, both mortal and divine, are repaid in full. Because the Kurukshetra war contains too many key moments to cover in this single introductory video, I may create shorter videos dedicated to specific events, such as Bhishma's confrontation with Shikhandi, where his self-imposed vow and destiny collide. The climactic battle between Arjuna and Karna, filled with revelations and heartbreak. The strategies employed by the Pandavas to defeat their teacher, Drona. Krishna's role in shaping the outcome of the war, while guiding Arjuna through his moral dilemmas in the Bhagavad Gita. Each of these moments provides profound lessons, not only in terms of philosophy, but also in courage, duty, and the ramifications of human decisions. If you're interested, I plan to create short follow-up videos diving into these significant moments, such as Bhishma's final fight against Shikhandi, Krishna's role in tipping the scales of the war, or even how Arjuna overcame Karna. Intrigued? Drop a comment to let me know. Finally, let me address an important question. Why should you read the Mahabharata? There are two major reasons. First, from a philosophical standpoint, the Mahabharata is profoundly rich in moral dilemmas, timeless lessons, and depictions of human conflict. Its characters are morally complex. None are purely good or evil, reflecting the gray nature of real life.